Arkansas guard Darius Acuff Jr. put together one of the most prolific and impressive seasons for a true freshman guard we've seen in some time, winning the Bob Cousy Award for the nation's best point guard, the 2025-26 SEC Player of the Year Award, all while leading the Razorbacks to an SEC tournament win and Sweet 16 berth in the process. Acuff is a 6'3" lead guard who came in as the number 10 player per RSCI, but wasn't necessarily looked at as a bona fide draft prospect for some. He quickly made himself known as such, averaging 23.5 points and 6.4 assists on the season. While he's slightly undersized, he has a sturdy build and plus length, with a reported 6'6" wingspan. Acuff's primary strengths include his pace and poise, 3-level scoring, creation ability, and passing and playmaking. Acuff offers a lead guard prospect at the NBA level, whose appeal will be handling the ball and making plays for himself and others, which I feel can be best encapsulated by the pace and poise that he plays with. Again, Acuff is slightly undersized by NBA standards at 6'3" and doesn't have premier vertical athleticism, but he makes up for it with a stocky, tanky build and an incredible feel for pacing and poise that saw him look more like a fifth-year senior than a true freshman. Despite his bulkiness, Acuff is shifty and crafty with a good first step that can see him push past the first line of defense with consistency. He's an expert navigator of the floor with a very natural sense for when to attack, when to be patient, and facilitate. Acuff's on-ball style is highlighted by his ability to command the tempo of possessions in games, with feel for when to slow things down and when to press the gas. He's a great ball handler with a variety of different dribble moves who can manipulate defense in a lot of different ways. His go-to is his change of speed and hesitation, which combined with his 3-level scoring, leaves defenders guessing whether he's going to pull up or continue downhill. In addition to pacing, Acuff has also displayed a ton of poise and maturity as a ball handler, not only in being unshakable, but also in showing up in big moments time and again. Acuff's wider frame and stockier build help him to play through contact, hitting tough shots and getting passes off regardless of pressure. He's especially good at maintaining his composure at top speed, focusing to get cleaner shots off than expected or passes through tight windows. Again, Acuff looked more like a veteran than a 19-year-old, acting as a superstar for Arkansas en route to one of its best seasons in years, commanding the offense, carrying the scoring load, and making big-time plays down the stretch of games. With this combination of handling and feel for attacking, Acuff put together truly one of the best scoring seasons we've ever seen for a true freshman guard, scoring 23.5 points on 48% shooting overall, doing so at all 3 levels. Acuff spread his shots around really well, further adding to flexibility and ability to keep defenses guessing. On 595 total shots, 31% came at the rim, 34% came in the mid-range, and 35% came from beyond the arc, as seen by this very cool shot chart per Draft Baller. By the way, first scouting report in the draftballer.com era. Go check that out. Truly incredible NBA draft website. I'll link it in the description. Acuff shot 58% at the rim in total, hitting 119 of 205 layups and just 2 of 6 dunk attempts. Those numbers portray that he is obviously not a high-flying athlete, but his pure volume was great and his efficiency in general graded out good per synergy, pointing to Acuff's aforementioned first step and straight line speed, in addition to a pretty adept finishing package. In tandem with getting all the way downhill, Acuff has what is likely the best floater in the 2026 draft class, having hit 30 of 65 shots for a 46% conversion rate. Really elite stuff for a 6'3" guard. He has visible touch on these, able to see them through on the move or after putting on the brakes. He can be a little reliant on the floater, which we'll touch on later, but in the least, this is a real weapon in his arsenal. In the mid-range, Acuff used his craft and floor reading to navigate towards space and knock down jumpers. He's not an elastic or bendy player, but his unflappable handling and ability to stop and start allowed him to access all parts of the floor and get all kinds of shots off. Acuff wasn't expected to be an elite 3-point shooter coming into the season, with this as one of his bigger pre-cycle question marks, though he completely flipped the script here, hitting a mind-bending 44% of nearly 6 triples attempted per game. Acuff was an effective to elite 3-point shooter in truly every single way. He shot 49% on catch and shoot shots, a blistering 60% on 40 unguarded, and 44% on 76 guarded shots. He shot 46% spotting up from 3, a point to both past and future off-ball impact, in addition to 37% in transition, and 50% on handoffs and 60% off-screen, both of which were really low volume. Still, Acuff's shooting feels pretty unquestionable following his lone season with the Razorbacks. While it may not stick at this level, good enough mechanics and loads of confidence project his perimeter prowess to stick around. In tying this section together with the first, there is just not much that can throw Acuff off his scoring rhythm. If he can't beat you at one level, he'll toggle to another, probably with success. And while NBA defense is sure to take things up a notch, Acuff's all-time output speaks to the fact that he should be able to adapt down the line.
Control tempo. Brazil shares it. The right wing three from Acuff.
We've established that Darius Acuff is a 3-level scorer, but just how he was doing so at all 3 levels is even more important, with a large portion of his offense being self-created in addition to truly elite shot making. In marrying Acuff's pace, poise, craft, and handling to his ability to actually see the ball through the hoop, it made him one of the better creators in the country, able to simply generate offense whenever needed, which for Arkansas was often. A whopping 75% of his at-rim shots were unassisted, 80% of his mid-range shots were unassisted, and 40% of his threes were unassisted, with him operating as a one-man wrecking crew often for Arkansas, good for a near 30% usage under head coach John Calipari. The pick and roll was Acuff's bread and butter for Arkansas, functioning as his most used and one of his most efficient play types, good for 213 total possessions, 1 point per possession, and 48% shooting overall, 52% from 2 and 36% from 3. Ball screens just added another dynamic to his ability to handle and fill it up, creating even more space for him to operate and more ways to facilitate, which added to his options. Despite that, screens weren't totally necessary, with isolation play making up a large portion of Acuff's offensive profile. He saw an absurd 141 total possessions in isolation, shooting 44% in total, in employing every skill in his bag: handling, craft, speed, shot making, and more. Acuff's prowess off the dribble is perhaps the biggest component here, with his ability to go from a live dribble to his shot motion lightning quick. He shot 37% on his dribble jumpers in totality, the catch being his absurd volume in doing so at 193 attempts across his 36-game season. He shot 37% on dribble jumpers from 2 and 38% on dribble jumpers from 3, on a good mix of both. His craft continues into his pure shot-making ability, carving out small bits of space with footwork, bumps, and more to get shots off. His composure continues to be notable, with him firing off balance, through contests, in all types of disadvantaged situations where he creates positives out of nothing. At a face value glance, Acuff might not have the prototypical combination of tools wanted for a creator at the NBA level, but it certainly feels like he has enough juice via prolific output and eye test to project continued success in the association. Acuff's passing and playmaking ability is the last of his strengths here, but certainly shouldn't be undersold as one of his premier skills. In addition to a truly historic scoring season with Arkansas, he was able to put together a phenomenal campaign sharing the wealth to other talented Razorbacks. Acuff averaged 6.4 assists to 2.2 turnovers in total, touting a near 3-to-1 assist to turnover ratio, in addition to a 32% assist percentage, all truly elite numbers that point to him being fully capable of manning offense at the next level, outside of simply just filling it up. Acuff's ability to play at his own pace and not get sped up continues to aid him here. Despite that choppy pace, he processes pretty rapidly, be it in the open floor, the pick and roll, or simply creating on the fly. He has a keen understanding of how things are flowing and when things will open up. He's capable of keeping things simple, and did often in setting up his teammates time and again for easy buckets. But he's also not limited to one-away passes, able to skip with real vision, velocity, and accuracy. In tandem with his transition scoring, his second most prolific mode of offense on the season, he's also constantly looking to get up and go, able to hit ahead with ease. Acuff can make every single read out of the pick and roll, able to live dribble pass with either hand, make concise bounce passes to rollers, easily lob to cutters, and zip it to shooters. He is quite easily the best lob passer that I personally have ever scouted, able to put truly feathery touch and placement on these right around the rim every single time. He has a really great sense of where the pressure is shaping up and how actions are developing in real time. There are times where Acuff's lack of ability to see over defenders causes him to jump before passing. This allowed him to get better angles and fit passes through tight windows, but it is obviously not ideal, and it does slow things down a tad and leave him stranded in some scenarios. Despite Acuff's volume and burden as a passer, it rarely feels like he's forcing anything, but rather has a really unique control over the game. Most simply, given the level of creation that Acuff was working with and the situations he was put in, I think he put out some of the best passing and playmaking numbers and tape of the 2026 draft cycle.
three for the Hogs.
Far and away, Acuff's primary area of improvement is his defense across the board. There's no real way around it. Acuff was a poor defender at the collegiate level, which face value stats, advanced metrics, and tape all bear out. For starters, while I don't think Acuff's size and frame affects him much as an offensive player, it is really limiting here, not only in the lack of height and truly elite length, but also in the lack of east-west flexibility. Whereas downhill speed is a plus as a scorer, it doesn't do much here, and his lack of bend is pretty apparent in his stiffer defensive style. I think there's potential for his stocky build to aid him in more strength-based scenarios, but again, the numbers didn't necessarily point to that being the case with Arkansas. Acuff's defensive numbers left plenty to be desired with the Razorbacks, even accounting for all-time offensive production. He averaged 0.8 steals and 0.3 blocks, going for 30 steals and 11 blocks total across 36 games. He finished with a pretty paltry 1.3 steal percentage and a 0.9 block percentage, just largely unable to really make plays on that end. He saw a 7-game span in SEC play this year without a single steal, which I really don't know how that happens. And his overall defensive box plus minus of just 0.7 points to the lack of impact overall. This is really sort of a three-headed monster for Acuff. Firstly, his size already has him behind the 8 ball, while 6'3" with a 6'6" wingspan isn't all-time bad measurables. It is certainly well below average for the modern NBA, so we're already working with a lower floor and ceiling than most prospects. And that could be worked through somewhat if there were real defensive instincts at play here, but secondarily, a lack of stocks and impact metrics point to that not really being the case. He simply didn't generate turnovers at a good enough rate to project even median NBA defense. His screen navigation in particular especially needs work, getting blown completely out of place with solid contact pretty consistently. And lastly, the tape backs up a lot of these sentiments, showing inconsistent instincts, awareness, and even effort level at times. And this triple whammy of bad tools, bad stats, bad eye test creates a vision of a pretty huntable player at the NBA level that simply isn't capable of guarding the league's best scorers when targeted. Or, in the least, it creates a player you really have to mold defenses around, which does hurt Acuff's fit and malleability some in my eyes. To offer some positivity in this section, I do think there's a world where Acuff is a drastically better defender than he showed at Arkansas, which is still probably under average at the NBA level, but he's too instinctual offensively to be totally inept on defense, so I think for starters, it's more about raising the compete level in general on defense. And again, I do think he has a nice back pocket option with just how sturdy he is at 6'3". Is he going to be some elite point of attack defender? No. Can he compete more, shore things up off ball, and win some battles with his frame and moderation on the ball? I think so, but Acuff detractors can feel a little more believable when pouring over the defensive side of the ball. It's near impossible to poke holes in Acuff's offensive game at the college level. He scored historically and at all 3 levels, facilitated at an elite rate, and did all of it for a team that won games in a tough conference and the NCAA tournament. But in projecting his offense to the NBA level, there are some things that could raise flags for some evaluators and certain NBA systems. I've said a few times now that the concerns surrounding Acuff's size feel a little overblown to me, at least offensively, but the combination of his being 6'3", without NBA average vertical pop, and the potential lack of consistent blow-by speed and bend do cause some issues, which I think can best be summarized by his shot profile and selection. I say profile because the actual selection at the college level wasn't the issue. He was an effective scorer literally everywhere. But there could be a world where a guard using a heavy dose of floaters, mid-range shots, and tough contested jumpers doesn't necessarily appeal to some NBA decision makers, seeing as the NBA's size and athleticism is going to make those exact shots less tenable. Acuff can be pretty reflexive with his float game, sometimes unable to get all the way to the rim and opting for tougher floaters instead. The same can be said of his mid-range pull-ups, and I think it's a safe assumption that some better opportunities were left on the table in his 0.7 free throw rate, despite shooting over 6 free throws attempted per game. Again, you have to really squint to even get here because his offensive numbers are so good across the board, but while he is a tough shot maker, we've seen some NBA prospects on par with Acuff fail to translate this area over to NBA defense. Ultimately, I personally think Acuff has enough overall versatility that this will not be an issue, be it in his stocky build, straight line speed, feathery finishing, or elite shot making, and I also think playing with stars that have more or similar gravity will especially help his case and open things up. Darius Acuff Jr. offers a high-octane lead guard prospect. one who seems set to blow through any limitations thrown his way with unprecedented offensive output given his age. A scoring arsenal that, while not tailor-made for the modern NBA, feels equally timeless and unstoppable. I think Acuff's strengths and weaknesses make him a pretty specific prospect, but it does feel like we're racing toward an NBA team leaning into those positives in his game. Those teams that see a ball-dominant 1B type scorer that can game manage with the best and continue to add to his game could select him as high as number 5. I think weaknesses like reliance on tough shots and defense could see him taken lower, though it's clear he's put together a season worthy of being selected in the top 10. Some nice fits for Darius Acuff include the Dallas Mavericks, who have need of a long-term point guard and wingman alongside the ever-versatile Cooper Flagg. The Jazz seem like a funky fit at first glance, but should they land outside the top 3, I think their defensive line of Kessler and Triple J would be capable of covering up a backcourt with defensive deficiencies. And lastly, the Miami Heat, who could really use a game manager and star infusion at point guard.